Hello there, DMGers. My name is John Sirakis. You're listening and watching The Climb. This is the podcast video show where we talk to agency owners, marketers, technologists, and anybody that we find interesting based on our mission to build the healthiest companies and the best performing agencies. And this is brought to you by the Digital Mastermind. The Digital Mastermind is a mastermind. It's a group of agency owners, technologists, and awesome people that get together via Slack. We have a yearly meetup that's in Las Vegas. It's going to be gnarly this year. Limited supply and tickets due to COVID, so it's October 4th to October 6th. And if you'd like to join, go ahead and shoot me an email, johnjon@digitalmastermind.com, and we'll see if you're a fit for our tribe. All right. So today is something that's all over the media, right? We've been printing billions and trillions of dollars. It's about investing in finance. We had a fantastic guy that joined us for an interview named Adam Carroll, who in a lot of respects I want to be like when I grow up. But before we get into all that, Dave, why don't you come out here and let's talk about a little bit of investing in finance.
How's it going? I love this topic, so I'm super excited about it.
All right, what was your first investment?
My first, I wouldn't call it investment, but my first victory in my financial life was taking a credit card advance to pay the 6-month car insurance policy all in once, giving me like an $80 savings. And then I had like a 6-month zero APR on that credit card. So instead of just spending up that extra money, I saved it. And then at the end of 6 months, I then paid the credit card off and had an extra $80. And I went, this is how people with money get more money.
Did somebody give you this idea, or you just?
No, I just kind of put it together. I mean, the rules were, when I was paying for my car insurance, they were like, you can save $80 if you pay it all at once. And I'm like, how do I pay it all at once? So then I figured out a way to do it.
Yeah, right on. All right, so what's the worst investment you've ever made?
I bought a brand new car after I got my first, job out of college. So I was like, boom, I'm making money. Now let's spend it all. So yeah, I handcuffed myself right out of college with a brand new Jeep payment, and I leased it for like a 4 or 5 year lease. So really, really, that was my worst decision.
Cars just suck in general, though, insofar as an investment is concerned. That's tough.
It's not an investment,
right? It's
a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. And then however you shake it, it's like phones now, right? It's just this thing you have to pay for through life, and you can lease it, you can buy it. It's just you're minimizing to some respects. It's just shitty.
Yep. And it's not an asset, and the second you drive it off, you take a loss. So, which is why I advocate, saving up. Your negotiating power is so much more powerful when you're paying with cash or have an awesome down payment.
Yeah, no, we get into a lot of that in today's interview. And to everybody, I always recommend to check out the full interview whenever you get a chance, which we'll post live. It's typically on LinkedIn. So I think we should go ahead and get into this. So I'm going to go ahead and give a quick climb, or Adam's climb, and then we'll go ahead and get started here. All right. So Adam's super interesting guy. So he had no idea what he wanted to be. So he actually wanted to be Matt Lauer for a little bit and decided that wasn't for him. So he turned away from broadcast journalism. He did some media sales. He was actually a clothier for a company that hounds me all the time. He decided he wanted to be a speaker. In there, he took kind of a break, became a mortgage wholesaler for a little bit, went back to wanting to be a speaker. He studied it intently. He he went ahead and published a couple books in there. He's done some TED Talks. Just a fantastically accomplished guy that was kind enough to speak with us. And one of the books he wrote was Winning the Money Game. And another one is also to Build a Bigger Life Manifesto. I believe the latter is his newest one. All right, so I always like to start this out with a really snackable piece of information. And this is what Adam said. He thinks the best piece of advice for agencies and business owners is to do right now.
I think one of the greatest things that a business owner, someone who's doing presenting a lot could do is go take either an improv class or go take a joke writing class. Because I have coached a number of speakers in this industry. And what I find is that they'll read their stuff to me and my mind goes, you know, what would be funnier is if you said this. Or if you've ever heard someone say a joke and they say it backwards, so it's not as funny because they say the punchline and then the rest of the setup is after the punchline. Sometimes it's just hearing it and going, you know, if you reverse that, it would be 10 times funnier.
I've been known to say things in presentations and have it just completely fall flat. Dave, I'm sure you've witnessed some of those where the joke just didn't land the way that it should.
Sure. And I chalk, that lesson up to basically do public speaking. Speak in front of people as much as possible, no matter what it is, and you're going to get better at it. Whether it's, improv or comedy, like he mentioned, or it's just like I did a presentation at a local IT event where they just had a bunch of presentations. Like, get yourself out there, speak in front of people, and get comfortable doing it.
Yeah, and I think bombing is just a part of it. I've done improv, did quite a lot of it, and I remember I was doing a presentation for a friend that's a dentist in this big association. So we went ahead and did it. I can't remember how many dentists were there, maybe 50, 75, 100, and it was like the deadest room ever. And I just started calling it out. I was like, I guess we lost our sense of humor in dental school, and that didn't happen. But after, everybody came up and they loved all the content that I had, but there was no way that I thought during that entire presentation that I was going anywhere with it.
Yeah. I can't say that I've had that experience, but I haven't done that much speaking as well.
All right. Yeah. And he has. So I think that's one of the great things, the joke writing class, which I think is something I could use some help with.
So you've done improv, right?
Yeah. Improv is different, though. Improv is just like it's on the fly. You're taking, certain thoughts. You're working in teams. It's really good for listening and creativity. I wouldn't go as far as it's not joke writing necessarily. You can think of things to say in there, but yeah, stand-up comedy and joke writing is a completely different animal.
Do you feel your improv experiences help you in your agency?
To some respects, yeah. Absolutely. It's weird though. I'll go through something like that and I'm like, all right, I feel worse now. It's when you're learning something, it's like you feel dumber when you're learning it, but then when you cool down and all the pressure is gone, you feel smarter after.
Right.
It's like eating bad food or something. It might give you energy later, but it's gonna make you pretty sleepy. All right, we can get back on topic. I'm tangent oriented. So passive income, right? We're gonna hear what Adam says in a second, but you've done a pretty good job creating passive income for yourself, right?
So it all started with my first home that I purchased, and I just didn't sell it when it was time to move out. And so eventually it became an asset because now it's generating me money. And I was fortunate enough to get it paid off. I mean, I purchased it, 15 years ago. And now that it's a paid off asset, it's generating income. And I also love dividend investing. I love cash flow. So passive income. And after, when we were editing this interview and I'm listening to him, everything he says in this clip is just spot on.
I think that's a great tee up. Let's go ahead and hear what Adam has to say.
And you're right. I mean, there are to the naked eye, people are saying, well, I guess I have to invest in real estate, or I guess I'm doing dividend paying stocks. That's how I do this, right? And I started to dig into, this is part of the mastery of money study for me. But what are the ways? How would I create what Mark Victor Hansen told us years ago in a seminar? He said, you've got to create massive, passive, permanent streams of income if you want to create financial freedom. And so I always had that ringing in my ears: massive, passive, permanent, massive, passive, permanent. And there are a lot of ways to do that now online. You can white label software. So you could buy software from someone, white label it as your own, and sell it. So I have a site called Shred My Mortgage, which is a mortgage acceleration software that has been white labeled, and I sell that, and people pay a monthly subscription to use the software. So that's one form of passive income that I have. Certainly real estate investing I did for a number of years, and then realized that I had a duplex for probably the better part of a decade that I owned. And on a monthly basis, I think I maybe turned a $400 profit on that duplex. But I had tenant issue after tenant issue after tenant issue. And I started thinking, is this worth my time? You know, the deductions and the minimal amount of passive income, because candidly, I could sell 40 books and make as much money as I was on the rental property. And so for me, John, books became my rental property. I started investing more in how do I market these? How do I promote these? How do I put these out? Get them in the hands of booksellers and bookstores and marketing lists and you know, all the different kinds of advertising that book authors can do. I started digging into. So that's one way. On the real estate side, I still like real estate. And I realized that you can actually put money with folks who own real estate as a syndicated investor. And you can earn not only a monthly income, but then you can get a big back end. So I invest with an organization out of Rhode Island, and I'll put sometimes small quantities, sometimes big quantities in. But generally speaking, we get somewhere between a 12 and a 14% return every single year out of the money. And for me, I'm okay with that. Like, that's a good return on putting funds in, and I'm guaranteed the return. And this gentleman is someone I trust, and he's built a multi-million-dollar business doing something very strategically. And so I believe in his model. So that's another model of passive income. And the last one is one that I came across through a friend of mine, but it's basically owning intellectual property. You may know of Mike Michalowicz. Do you know Mike, the Profit First and Fix This Next? And
yeah, I've heard of. Yeah.
So the way he built his business is he would write a book, but he would sell the intellectual property rights to someone else. And so the book, he just wanted to be an author and a storyteller, but he knew that every book that he wrote would have a consulting business on the back end of it. He would sell the intellectual property rights to someone else, and then they would turn around and sell the coaching or consulting packages, and he would make a return on that money. So I had the opportunity to buy into one of the businesses that Mike sold. It's run by someone else, but I receive an annual recurring revenue on that. So some of this is, when I talk about passive income, it's really about where are you deploying money? And I think there is a mindset shift, certainly that business owners need to have, that if you are keeping all of your wealth in your business, it may not be the best bet. We have to figure out a way to extract some of the wealth from our business and plug it into vehicles that make passive income on a regular basis.
Great sage advice there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the passive income is your way to wealth. I mean, and people who just keep flipping to a bigger house, they're not really creating wealth, because you need a place to live. So if you're constantly just getting a bigger house by flipping, it's never going to pay you. Whereas if you keep moving to a new house and then rent out your old one, that passive income just helps you pay off your current house faster.
Well, I think that's the distinction. What wealth is, right? People don't understand. It's assets. You can make a ton of money and not have any wealth.
Right.
Because you are completely in debt. And Adam actually has worked with college students and all these others to create those programs to not be in debt. And I think having the side hustles and all these other channels, I don't know psychologically whether people that are more inclined to do that are less in debt, but I'd bet that the people that have that have substantially less debt because they understand how this game works.
The people that you see not CEOs, but you see VPs at big corporations, they have the big house with the giant car, the sports car. It's all leveraged. It's all borrowed. And the second they lose their job, they lose everything.
Mm.
That blows my mind.
Mhm.
The mindset that you must always spend up to your income has to change for people if they want to be wealthy. So when you get the raise, and he talks about this, I'm going to hint a little bit. This is a later clip, but be very intentional with what you do with your money. And when you get a raise, you say, all right, that's $3,000 more I'm going to get this year. Do something with that $3,000 that's going to generate you $300 the next year, instead of getting a bigger TV.
And the irony of this, though, is that we speak to marketing agencies and we create this consumerism. But well, I know, but no, it's funny. It's like we're, as marketers, in a lot of sense, we're doing all this stuff, but we're not understanding the ramifications of it.
Sure. But I mean, that's why the whole term discretionary funds come in. I mean, you do have to spend money. You're going to spend money on entertainment, on utilities, on transportation, on things like that. So that's what we're trying to do, is trying to convince people to spend your discretionary income with us. But that's the job of a marketer. But then as an individual, like if you want to grow wealth, wealth only comes from savings and investing, right? You're not going to hit the Powerball. You're not going to have an unknown dead relative that, gave you $1 billion in inheritance. So what can you do to build wealth over time? And the sooner that you start, the sooner you'll get there. But you have to put that extra money you receive, put it into something that's going to grow you more money in the future and forever, hopefully. That's why I like dividend investing. And REITs, real estate investment trusts. He talked about having a real estate property. I've had terrible tenants. It's absolutely terrible. I've gone 6 months without getting rent. And that's why it's key to make sure you pay off your rental property as soon as possible. Because when you owe a mortgage and you have rental problems, it's like the short squeeze, because now you're having to cover both your current living and your rental property. So once you get it paid off, though, you have the freedom to ride out a terrible tenant. And I also highly recommend getting a home warranty. Some people don't like it. Some people do. But when my tenants have an issue, I put a ticket in and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's $500 a year.
I think that part's smart. But I also look at your market too, right? So if you're buying a house right now that you plan on renting out, that might not be for you, right? You might, for like Adam's case, he was making like $400 or something based on everything that he was spending. I think the other point too is looking at if you have the other passive lines of income, it's kind of a diversification. If you have books, if you're doing speaking or whatever those other elements are, I believe that's a smart path. And I love the idea of the mailbox money. Just that always fascinated me when I was a kid, and I have some what I would call like side hustles and other things, but I would say I could do better on the front of creating more lines of passive income.
What's mailbox money?
It means you've never heard this term?
No.
Wow, that's surprising. Mailbox money is it just shows up in your mailbox. It's
right.
Just passive income. It's another way of saying it. Yeah, well, you just receive checks. People that have licenses, like I know some brokers and even some contractors that they give their license out to others to use, and they just receive a percentage of those fees. And it's pretty substantial depending on who you let use your license. And that is a perfect definition for passive income and mailbox money.
Well, also almost sounds like fraud.
Almost sounds like fraud. Okay. I'm not an attorney. I think, it depends, right? This could get a little political. I mean, depending on the regulations necessary, right? Is that regulation necessary for someone to use a license? And if there is a citation or a citing, he or she is ultimately responsible because they are the license holder.
Right.
Yeah. Now I feel like an attorney.
Right.
All right. So So let's say we have passive income. You also have wealth in your business. This is, which I have always heard, one of the hardest things to do is to extract wealth out of your business. And this is what Adam says about that.
I think generally speaking, and I did this the first few years of my business, I got used to the income that I was making, and my lifestyle, it's Parkinson's law, right? Your expenses will always rise to meet income. So my expenses went up. I bought a nice car, and we got a new house, and we had to furnish the house, and we did all these things. And I started realizing in more of my study that, and this is going to sound like a kind of a duh statement, but it's not how much you make, it's how much of what you make you keep that will help you win the game. And if there is none left over at the end of the month, then we are constantly eating what we kill over and over and over again. So we have to play great offense in the sense that we're always expanding our business, but we also have to play great defense. And great defense means we are looking at some of the things that are like, well, that's superfluous spending. Why are we doing that? Let's cut that out. And I maintain that agency owners every year need to do a budget audit and just say, what are we spending money on right now that we didn't get anything out of this year? And we all have it, right? Like you have subscriptions that are hitting your credit card every month, and it's like, well, yeah, it's $20 or it's $100 or whatever it is. We all have them. Some of them have an ROI. Some of them are purely done out of habit. And we have to get really intentional about whatever we're investing in our business is generating an ROI. I heard it put this way this last year, which I thought was really great. You can't have flabby finances. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't have flabby finances, especially when in the last year, there were companies from an agency perspective that were like, we're just not really sure about advertising right now. We're going to cut back, or Facebook ads got so expensive, we're just going to push pause. So then agencies are like, well, shoot, what do? We have all these expenses we have to cover. So you can't have flabby finances. And I think that's one of the keys is, and it goes back to Mike's book, Profit First. The whole premise of having a business is to make profit. And so that ought to be the very first thing that we take off the table is what we want profit, what we want for profit. And then the decision is, when we take that money off the table as profit, what do we do with it? How are we deploying it? If it's just going to our lifestyle, that's not a great deployment. So this was my mindset and where my wife and I have kind of taken things financially. I made the comment to her one time, wouldn't it be great if we lived on 30% of our income and put away 70%? And she was like, yeah, that'd be great. Not going to happen. And then I started figuring out ways like Shred My Mortgage, how to blast away all of our debt. And when you don't have the largest payment in your house, for us, it was like $1,800 a month was our mortgage payment. But we had some extra discretionary funds that were sitting in savings accounts, and it was going to investments, and some were good and some were bad. And then I'm doing the math like, well, what if we did just blast away the mortgage? We could get it done in 3.5 years. Then you got an extra $2,000 a month that you can play with. Your expenses are less. We have a whole, litany of options now that we didn't have before. So in effect, we got to a point, right now we live on about 40% of what we make. And 60% goes into other investments to make up the 40%, if that makes sense. So it's like, how do I take the 60% that I'm not using and invest it in a way that covers the 40% we need to live every single month?
What I love about that model is with 40%, if you even mess up with the 60% that you're investing, you're still covered because the base is already there.
I love everything he said in that quote and that clip. I mean, it's so true. If you could get rid of your mortgage payment, and you and I talk about this all the time, if you can deploy that, let's say $2,000 into a different investment that's going to pay you back. I mean, think about that. That's really what we're talking about, really, is like $500 every week that you now can deploy into an investment that can then pay you back. So every week you exist, you're going to generate an extra $5 a year in interest or dividends or something. All right. So every week, week 2, you're now $10. Week 3, $15. Now do that for 5 years, and you've added an extra, $150, $250 a week to your income for not doing anything. You didn't work for it. You just stored it away. And now you can spend that. Have you ever heard of dividend investing? or not just dividend investing. There's a specific one that you only can buy things that your dividends from your investments pay for. So if you want to get like super fast internet, and let's say it costs $100 a year, you have to then put as much money in savings that will pay for that $100 a year or $100 a month. Have you ever heard of that?
No. It sounds pretty fierce though.
It sounds awesome that basically you just save away into some stock or some investment vehicle that pays a regular dividend, and then you use that dividend money to pay for your lifestyle.
Man, I don't know. Like that to me seems a little too aggressive.
It's tough to do. I mean, especially with the savings rates that we're seeing today, and that's the most challenging thing. Like, I wish we could just go back to the saving rates. And yes, mortgages were a little pricier, but at least you earned money on your savings.
Yeah, now it's absolutely nothing.
It's worthless. So that's another good point and supporting factor for him is of paying off your mortgage. You're not really earning anything with that extra money that you're paying, but you can save yourself 3 to 4% in interest. So
I think there's another message that's not said there too, which is that you have to have a good partner if you want to control your finances. If you don't have a good partner in your relationship, it's not going to work. I know a lot of unhappy people that it's money is typically the driver for their separations and their unhappy marriages.
Yep.
I think we got a great comment here from good old Kells Murphy. If you spend all of your time in your recliner, suppose the TV is a solid ROI. From an entertainment perspective, I would have to agree with you.
But you could spend. I'm all for nice TVs. Just spend that from saving. Don't finance it.
Everybody gives me shit about my TV. My TV. So I bought the plasma. So straight out of college, get a good job, and I bought like. It was a pretty expensive plasma TV at the time, right? And I still have that TV. It runs glorious. And that thing is, oh man, that's almost a 20-year-old TV.
So really what we're talking about here is we need to change the mindset of the day-to-day person if you want to change your financial future, right? Just like you and what you just said about you, I'm a late adopter, and I don't need the new iPhone when it comes out. I don't need the new Android when it comes out. My phone's fine. It works. I don't need the new TV. I've got an 8-year-old TV. I had a 12-year-old car before I just got a new one. Be okay with that. There's some people that just constantly have to be on the forefront. It's expensive to be on the forefront.
Yeah. I paid $4,700 for that TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for 20 years, that's pretty good. Even though just a few years later, people were buying the LCD ones for $400. But I agree. But I think that's also those are personality differences, right? That's somebody that likes to work out in the mornings, and then eat vegan food versus, somebody that doesn't. I think a lot of those are. But at the end of the day, I think those are conditioned based on fear of missing out, insecurities. I need to have the latest and greatest. I don't mind buggy devices. I don't know why anybody gets a Gen 1 anything.
Right. And also, like, even in your living situation, like I'm a CEO of a Fortune 5,000 company. I live in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's a small house for my age and income, but I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it. And it allows me to fund other investments. So I get, what my biggest issue is buyer's remorse. After I buy something, I'm like, oh, that money could have been making me money. And I just handed it away for someone. I hate that. But I also know there's things that have to be purchased. But I look at, the sexiest number I look at, and he was talking about flabby finances, is how much money am I generating per month that I didn't work for? That passive income. Like, I like seeing that go up every single month.
Yeah, I think, and even if it's just saving, right? Long as you're squirreling away, and granted, if you're just saving right now, we're printing money, the inflation's coming, you're going to be losing more than you have. But I think another solid point is to have the just the mindset, right? That, for instance, shopping for products. If you don't take time to research now that you have the capabilities in the internet before you make a purchase, doing all comparisons, seeing coupon codes, seeing deals, you're stealing from yourself. And it should be painful to make high involvement purchases. That's the point of them. When you make impulsive decisions on a phone, which is now over $1,000 if you're getting a decent one, or a car, if you're making those types of decisions, you have a psychological issue. You don't appreciate the value of the resource that money is and what it can do. And you're going to, I would admit, get yourself in trouble a long time. And I know doctors, attorneys, and CEOs of pretty successful companies that are horrible with money, surprisingly horrible with money, and they are racked in debt, and they're continually fighting all the time to make sure that they survive on a personal level, of course, because that will then take whatever their companies or corporations down are. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
So that's a perfect tee up to one of our viewers here. Beth messaged in with, I like to live a YOLO, treat yourself life. What are the best first baby steps to take to shake out of that lifestyle? How do you talk yourself out of spending money unnecessarily?
I'd like to start with, you stop thinking of yourself as the YOLO / treat yourself person.
Right.
What else you got, Dave?
I think this first step is you have to think of passive income as sexy. If you can't get your mindset on that, you're not going to care about the future of.
You think my minivan is sexy?
I mean, it's the thing that excites me the most financially when I look at my personal finances as well as our company's finances is how much money do I get to stock away each month, which then creates another little gap of the bump of how much passive income I get. And it's not much. It's like maybe, every month it's like $5, but that's $5 for a month that I don't have to work for. So that's like getting a free foot-long sandwich a month for the rest of my life, as long as I don't touch that money.
Yeah.
And that is how you've got to think about things. And so every tiny increment, just think of it. Oh, I'm getting a free sub a month. Oh, I get a free, I don't know, what's something that costs $10, and then eventually, you just think about these things you're getting for free in the future, just for not touching the money. That's all you have to do. It's the easiest thing. Don't.
I know. I think that association is not as thrilling, though, right? So it's like,
because instant
gratification. I just bought a burrito with my dividend today, where I think that it's instant gratification and the power that somebody has when they're just buying something, right?
But imagine once you start getting these things, and now your income is 100% saved, because now your dividends are paying for a lot of these things, or at least, like he mentioned, the 74 or the 40, 60 or
40 is what they spend, 60 is what they save and invest.
When you are putting away that much money, I mean, you feel rich, because most of your money's stacking up, not going out the door. When I felt poor is when I was spending my whole paycheck and then there was nothing left over at the end of the month, or very little. It doesn't feel like you're making progress. You're just paying all these bills, all these interest rates and credit cards and car payment and insurance and mortgage. I mean, it's just like, I call them paycheck vampires, because they're all just sucking a little blood out of your paycheck. And if you're working your ass off and at the end of the day you have nothing to show for it, damn, shame on you.
Shame on you. Yeah. So what image do you see when you think of like wealth? Like what populates in your mind?
Financial independence. I do not think of the safe with a bunch of gold and like Scrooge McDuck swimming.
That's exactly what I think of. Scrooge McDuck diving in there. Oh, I love that thought. Oh, that to me that's so glorious.
To me, I've seen it in a movie, and it's called "Fuck You, Money." So
that was the one with the Goodman says that line. John
yes. Yeah. And basically, you need to be generating income, financially independent, so that you can tell anyone that you don't want to work with, "Fuck you," and that's your life. That's power. That's what I think of wealth.
I think Scrooge McDuck had more power than all those guys.
Oh, they did. But I just want to be independent. I'm a libertarian. I don't want to have dominion over lots of things. I just want to be left alone.
Yeah, I like a giant pile of cash that you can do whatever you want with. That's what.
Well, how do you get it?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, I look at it as investing in businesses, and then it's also investing in other outcomes that create passive income, right? Whether it's going to be dividends or that book that I'm going to write pretty soon. That's hopefully just going to be a seller. I'm not even looking for a bestseller.
How to Scrooge McDuck your Bitcoins. So there's no more. Now it's a digital. It's a virtual.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting virtual reality. They should make a Scrooge McDuck VR experience where you can actually
dive into that
through a vault of gold coins.
And I've thought about it at night. It's like, yeah, you know what? That would crack your cranium. Like the coins are not separating. Like this is death, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure some wacko out there's tried it. We could probably find out. But all right, so we got how to extract wealth out of your business. Now let's talk about how to invest all that money into your future. This is what Adam has to say about that.
So we have, my wife's got a 403B plan through her employer. And it's grown and done nicely. It's like it's a TIAA CREF account, which it's a great company. And for us, I look at that as our stable, safe, secure future money. Then I tend to dabble a little bit. So I have some trading accounts that are more stock heavy, and I have money in Bitcoin. And for me, Bitcoin is just digital gold. Like I'm holding it as a hedge against currency. And knock on wood, it's been a really solid growth year. And then the other two ways, in the midst of paying off the mortgage, one of the things that I realized is that the equity in your home has no internal rate of return. It's good. Like your home is going to appreciate 3% or 5%, depending on where you live, no matter if you owe 100% or 10% on the house. So we paid off our home, and actually we did it twice in the last 10 years because we would pay it off and then I'd leverage it and we'd invest in something and then I'd pay it off again. And what I realized is I wanted to build a bank of money that was available to me at any given point in time, and I could leverage it over and over and over again. And I read a book called Becoming Your Own Banker by a guy named R. Nelson Nash. And Nash basically said the best way to do this, and the way that Walt Disney built Disneyland and the Rockefellers passed on their money, is through cash value whole life insurance policies. But you overfund them for the first 4 years, and then you scale way back on the premium. It's called a high equity cash value policy. So effectively, some of our long-term funds are held in insurance policies for my wife and I, but we build up a big cash amount in them, and then we deploy that money in other investments like this real estate play that I mentioned before. So at any given point in time, there may be $100,000 or $200,000 with this real estate investment that earns a monthly recurring revenue. And then when the deal cashes out, we get another big bump at the end. And so it might turn 100 into 150 within 3 years.
Who the hell doesn't like that return?
I mean, that's awesome and amazing. I mean,
it also takes diligence, right? Because if you miss your premium, then your bank's closed.
Yeah. Yeah. You could technically borrow from your bank to pay your premium
if you wanted to. I like that idea of becoming your own bank, because I just think banks, they don't treat us as well as they should, right? They make substantially more money with our money than they give to us. Even with the PPP, they're getting 5% for every single PPP loan that they're giving out. That is insane to me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It was really just a buyout, or a payoff. That's why we're moving a majority of the Oyova bank account funds to a credit union. They pay more, and it impacts us locally. I mean, the thing that we've talked about this from for a while now is I'm hyper local focused, and I want to make sure we're making an impact. Anything we can do to help the local, the state of Florida. I'd rather do that than have my money sitting in some national bank that's not impacting Florida at all, or Jacksonville at all,
or even regional banks. Regional banks cover a region that's not really as local as it can be. But I love that idea, and I think what happens here, and you've kind of touched on this a bit, is you have to condition yourself based on these, right? So it's the perfect question, like Beth asked, like what are those baby steps? And I think those baby steps, now that I've had a little bit of time to think about it, I think it's paying off and owning one asset.
Yep. I was just gonna say that. Like my wife was not a financially sound person before we got together, right? So I've enforced her to be to look at.
mean dinner's not made.
So when we were first dating, and after we started getting to know each other, finances started coming up because I like to talk about finances, and she was like, "Yeah, I still owe $10,000 on my student loan," and I was like, "Well, how much do you have in savings?" She's like, $5,000. I'm like, "So you're paying a 5%, interest rate to service your student loan while you're making 0% on your $5,000." So I was like, it cost you money to live. You're losing money per day. So I explained that to her, and I said, all right, take that $5,000 and pay off half of your student loan immediately. She's like, oh, but that's my emergency fund. I'm like, your credit card is your emergency fund, because you have credit for a reason. If you use credit to buy everyday things, that's not the way you're supposed to use credit. You're supposed to use credit as oh shit, I don't have money for this, I'll use the credit card. If your whole life is, oh shit, I don't have money for this, change something you're doing in your life, because it's not right. And then once she did that, then she started aggressively paying off the half student loan that was remaining. And then when it got paid off, she went, oh my God, I didn't ever think I was going to get rid of that. So that's not an asset, but people that do that with their credit card, that are constantly stuck in credit card debt, or any kind of debt, pay off your car, do something. Once they pay that off, and then, I got $300 now a month that isn't earmarked towards a bill. What can I do with that?
And I know your wife, she's immensely smart. And I think this is just another testament to that this is a game. And if you don't know the rules of that game, then you're going to be in a position where you actually think that you're winning and you're not. For instance, pawn shops. You know how pawn shops function, right?
Yes.
It's like a hard money lender where these people will they'll pawn a gun or a ring, and they'll pay on that thing for 20 years because that's their security that's in there. And it's this psychological thing where they just, in the amount of money is insane multipliers based on what it is that they pawned. And it's just these games. And once you snap somebody out of that game and make them realize the distinctions and what is actually occurring, it's a completely different world for them.
Correct. And your mindset when you're growing your income monthly outside of your paycheck, that is what changes people's minds. Your income, your effort, your work is always going to be the number one return on investment, the money you make. I mean, it's unless you're talking about ultra wealthy people, and that's not the top audience we're talking about. But your job is always going to be your number one moneymaker. Everything outside of that needs to be growing consistently. So if you're about to do an action, like pull out a bunch of money to pay for something, then that's going to damage your ability to generate funds outside of your job. So, for example, and I preach this all the time, I knew I was going to need a new car 4 years ago. So 4 years ago, I created a vehicle fund and started funding it every single month. That money I did not count as, my savings, because I knew one day that was going to go to buy a car. And I executed that plan when my car broke down. So I was prepared and I was able, and it didn't affect my ability or it didn't change my investments at all buying a new car.
It was already spent money.
Yep. It was just under so I was doing what he was saying. I was being my own bank, but I was putting the money away for something I knew I was going to need later. And so instead of borrowing from the bank, I borrowed from myself. And meanwhile, I think I was able to purchase, I think it was $450 more a car than due to the interest that I made over the time. I mean, it wasn't much because the high yield savings rate is just getting pummeled, but still, that got me an extra cup holder maybe.
Yeah, pummeled's an understatement. Looks like you got a question here.
David, knowing that savings accounts don't have the ROI for dividend investing, how do you assess your market risk when buying high dividend stocks? Do you buy and forget about it, or do you monitor and actively trade? So my favorite stock is O, which is monthly, what is it called? Monthly income. It's a REIT. And that's a set it and forget it. and I have it rebuy automatically. So every month I purchase like 2 shares for free. And then those 2 shares next month generate me, I think right now it's 23 cents a share. So every month is adding like a half a dollar to the amount of money that I'm generating. So at the end of the year, for not doing anything, I haven't touched or done anything, I now generate $6 more a month. Again, I get a free, I'm adding a free foot-long sandwich every year. But,
don't splurge.
Inflation can kill those kind of investments. I definitely stay away from CDs, anything that locks away your money. And high yield savings accounts are 0.5%, but that's my emergency fund that generates money. But we also, a lot of the things that Adam talks about is we've invested in other businesses. You and I have gone in and bought a job board, Jobs in Sports, which is a essentially passive income for us. There's other things that can produce a steady dividend I look to invest in. And to me, I also call, the rental income, a part of my, when I say dividend, I just mean passive income. So I should start saying passive income. So hopefully that answers Kel's question. I do have a fun, I have fun money that I have in a TD Ameritrade account that I do trade. And I did just get crushed on the GameStop.
I warned you. This is not going to end well.
I'm still holding it. I'm holding it forever. So that money is earmarked as thrown away already. So I might as well hold on to the share.
I was like, I don't know. This doesn't end well. I
also own precious metals. I also own Bitcoin, and
you're diversified. Diversified.
Correct. I always put a little bit of something in other thing. Another service that I really, really like is Betterment, and that's investing. It's robo investing. And
Dave is not a financial advisor, not financial advice.
No, I'm actually. I just so you know, I bought GameStop stock, so that tells you everything.
Yeah. So,
but Betterment's a robo advisor that money goes in automatically, so therefore it just continually generates more and more dividends. So the one story that I read a while ago that I loved is that this doctor retired at like 48 because they put away $1,000 a week or into investing. And by the time she was 48, her investments were generating $5,000 a month in dividends.
Wow.
That's all she needed to live, to support her family. So, yeah. So she now is generating $60,000 a year and not working.
I think the other thing too is he had another question in there. Do you forget about it or do you monitor your activity and actively trade? I know you actively monitor your finances.
Oh, absolutely.
Part to his question. Yeah, you're looking. How often do you look at it?
Like
Daily?
I told you, that number of how much money I'm generating without working, I monitor all the time. I want to see that going up all the time.
Yeah, but what is all the time? Is it like just a routine wise? Is this a daily thing you're looking at? Is this a weekly thing? Monthly? Okay.
Monthly. Yeah.
All right. So next clip we're going to get into in just a second is about TED Talks. I want to do a TED Talk. I was going to do one of the local ones, and I was speaking to one of the hosts, one of the ladies that was doing it. And my dog had just died the day before. And I was I think it was the day before or that day. Maybe we put her down. Poor little Seika Bells. Oh, I loved her. But I spoke with this lady about the TED Talk. She completely dashed all of my dreams. I think she was also having a bad day. It ended up in it wasn't a good conversation. But in any event, Adam was able to crack that code. So if you're interested in doing a TED Talk or just want to know, more about, the process of getting one, this is how Adam went about it.
And doing these college audiences and doing more associations and conference work. I had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Drew McClellan, and one of our mastermind partners, Mitch Matthews, who's another brilliant entrepreneur. And Mitch and Drew and I were having lunch one day, and we always, whenever we do our mastermind groups, we spend 45 minutes to an hour on each person. And it's like 15 minutes of what's up and then 45 minutes of them drilling each other with questions. And so they were drilling me with questions about what's next and what happens now and where do you want to take the speaking business? And at the time I said, I really feel like I have a TED Talk in me. and I want to deliver a TED talk and be on a TED stage. And Mitch said, I have this crazy idea about how to get a TED talk. And I said, okay, I'm all ears. He said, at the bottom of your email, I want you to do a solid double dash line under your signature line. And then in big, bold red letters, put, my big dream is to someday grace a TED stage. If you know of someone who could help me do that, I'd be forever in your debt. And I did that. I put that at the bottom of my email. I baked it into my signature and I sent out emails, and I completely forgot about it, John. And it was about 6 weeks later, I got an email from a student that had seen me present at a university. And he said, Adam, I'm writing because I'm on the curation team for this TED event. And you were the first person I thought of. Would you be interested in coming and speaking? And at the time, John, I was doing a ton of stuff around student loan debt and the issue that like a profound challenge that I saw on college campuses, which was students that were in way over their head, like 80 to 100 grand or more on a bachelor's degree. And so I did my first TED talk at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and had a great event, although it was their very first go at it. So the lighting sucked, the camera work was not great. And I was like, this is not going to be the product that puts me on the map. I was super proud of myself and glad I got to do it, but kind of came home going, okay, that was cool. I did it. I get to say I did it. And then about 4 weeks later, I got an email that read almost verbatim the way that the previous one did. And it said, Adam, this is so-and-so. I heard you speak years ago. I'm on the curation team for this TED event at the London Business School. And I'm curious if you would be interested in coming over. So we get on a call and I said, tell me more, what's going on? She goes, we have no money. We can't pay you. You'd have to fly your way over, fly your way back. We can't even pay for a hotel, but here's what I'm offering. And I was like, I'll do it. And so once again, I brainstormed some ideas on the TED Talk, talked to Mitch and Drew. They helped me hone in on an idea. And I watched dozens upon dozens of TED Talks, John, and broke them down. Like, why was that good? And why did that have millions of views? And what was it about Sir Ken Robinson and how he delivers that makes him so effective? And then I baked that into my program and went and delivered it. And lo and behold, that one went viral, and it's got like 5.6 million views today.
It's awesome. I gotta ask Adam though. Did he have the subject before he was accepted or not? Because I keep going back to the scar tissue of me arguing with that lady. It was crazy. I don't even remember what I said, but she was like, "So what? Like, why would you?" I was like, "You having a bad day or something?" Yeah, I was totally taken aback, and I was like, "You know what?" I was like, "Fuck this." I was like, "My dog died. I don't even want to talk to you today."
Yeah, I don't know. But what I love about his approach is that it's just super intentional. And he said, I want to accomplish this. What are the steps I need to do to accomplish this? And then he just executed on them. It's so refreshing in a world of people today that can't execute on a goal or on a plan or on anything. Like, there's information overload. People can't make decisions. People don't know how to just do something, accomplish it. Like, it's refreshing to hear when he speaks about that. It's like, this is what I want to happen, and this is what I'm going to do to make that happen. How often do you hear that?
But it was so subtle, which is beautiful. Like, he just put it in his email signature, right?
I love
and
that.
yeah, and it's an action, right? All right, so I got a line in the water, and let's just see what happens. And it went somewhere. But I think the other action too, though, was the exposure he was getting at all the universities. It's not just you emailing your local, plumbers and HVAC companies. You have to widen that circle if you want to do something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in writing books or doing the speakers tour, but I just took the message I took from him is just be very intentional and just do it, create the plan and do it, and it'll happen. So there's too much, in the world today. There's too much. One of my old sayings, which I haven't said in a long time, is "Can't lives on Won't Street."
Easy Street is right through the gutter. Sounds like Sesame Street.
But I mean, it's so true though. When you hear "I can't," it's no, you won't. You're not willing to put in what it takes to accomplish that.
There's a great book. I can't remember what it's called. It's about athletes, and you have a mental coach, right? So the premise of the book is that your mental coach is with you all the time. It's the voice that's in your head.
Correct.
So if your voice is telling you that I can't, like, that's like, all right, you're in whatever, let's say it's the Super Bowl, and then that's the coach on the sideline telling you all of those things. So you have to create a different conversation with yourself. Otherwise, you're continually coaching yourself to be, lack of a better term, a loser, and you're going to lose.
So funny you bring that up, because I thought about this the other day. Is your team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just won the Super Bowl?
You're damn right they did.
With Tom Brady, right?
Absolutely.
And
TB
so
stands for Tom Brady and Tampa Bay.
Yes. Tom Brady is the ultimate athlete that's going to prove you wrong. And so now go back 2 years when Bill Belichick and Tom Brady kind of had their falling out. Bill Belichick was basically telling the master of I will prove you wrong that he's no longer capable of being the starter for New England anymore. So Tom Brady then, like, Tom Brady's 6th round draft pick was the motivation he needed for 20 years to win 6 Super Bowls in New England. And then Bill Belichick gave him rocket fuel and then sent him to Tampa Bay. I mean,
absolutely. Embarrassment's a hell of a motivator, man.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that on him. And the guy is he's incredible, right? So, and I remember at the beginning of the season, I said I just feel honored being a Bucs fan since I was a little kid that we get the greatest quarterback in the history of quarterbacks coming here. I don't even care if he did good, right? It was just the honor of having his presence. And I'll be frank, like, I hated his guts before he was on our team. Now it's I would do anything for him. I'm that big of a fan.
Are you going to be upset when he retires a Patriot?
What's that?
Are you going to be upset when he retires as a Patriot?
If Tom was to leave us, I would understand, but he wouldn't do that to us.
You don't think? He's
Go
definitely
back
signing
to the
one.
Patriots?
Huh?
You think he would go back to the Patriots?
No, but when he was ready to retire, he's going to sign a 1-day contract with New England to retire as a Patriot.
That's a formality, man. That's
Right,
like somebody walking into the gym, and grabbing a soda and saying I went to the gym. It's like, well, good for you.
Yeah.
You didn't work out. Yeah. And then what does that do? Like, what's the purpose? To saying literally just for him saying that he retired as a Patriot? Like, that's the whole purpose?
Well, no, it's so that it's for history books. Like when he goes in the Hall of Fame, he goes in the Hall of Fame as a Patriot.
I hope he squeezes the hell out of them for money for that one day. Like, oh yeah, we want that. It's gonna be $80 million bucks.
That's his legacy as well. I mean, I'm sure he wants to protect it.
I think he's over it, to be frank. I think he's got other aspirations, as soon as he gets done with football. And I don't think he cares whether that's part of the books or not.
Yeah. Jennifer messaged in, Tom Brady is the ultimate watch me. And I couldn't agree more.
I love the way she put that. Yeah. And what did Kel say? I think TB's 7th ring is the biggest FU money he can throw out there. Absolutely.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right. So Adam obviously is a fantastic content creator. So I wanted to ask him how the hell he's done it. And this is his advice and what he had to say.
And I'll give you kind of a prime example. I'm working with a client right now that is in the construction industry. So very specific niche. And they have recruitment issues. They have no idea how to recruit for all the jobs that they're going to have available. And it's a growing firm, and they need very, specific talent. They need operators. They need folks who understand GPS on bulldozers and things like this, And today in a meeting, I said, guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at on recruitment needs? Like 10 is the house is burning down. We have to have more people. And 1 is we have plenty of time. And one dude says 12, one dude says 9 or 10. And I was like, where's our recruitment strategy? And they were like, well, we're calling all these people. And I said, are there Facebook pixels on the site? Can we retarget? Are we doing any kind of referral campaign, like a $500 bonus to anyone who brings a buddy in this week? What are all the different ways we can do that? I maintain that an agency could say, hey, we are going to build this program for very specific niche industries on how to leverage marketing tactics to build your ideal employee base. And if you built that product and you had a company like this, And it was step by step. Like, it's a 6-module program. Here's how we lead you through it. And oh, by the way, we're going to do it over the course of 4 months. So every 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to meet, we're going to go through a module together, and you're going to get it for the low, low price of $7,500 a month. Right. But at the end, we're going to have, bare minimum, you're going to have 5 to 10 new hires. If you don't get 4, you're not charged anything. Like, let's make it completely, no brainer for the client. But I maintain that companies would be like, guide us. We just need your help on something. And then you could wash, rinse, and repeat over and over and over again. All the construction firms that need this, like, do this, do this, do this, do this. We've done it in 15 different cities across the country, and here's our results. You could build that, I think, in a couple weeks' time.
And I don't know if I even teed that up properly. I think the question that's being answered there is, all right, how do you formulate a program, a product, and then go ahead and sell it, right? And that's essentially what he explained. And in this next clip, he goes into how he gets this, incredible amount of work done, which I think is important, understanding what your relationship is to the work, as we were talking about the executioner earlier. So please go ahead and play that clip next.
My ace in the hole is my right-hand person. Her name is Molly Rose Speed. And Molly Rose and I make a great team. So have you heard of the book Rocket Fuel? Gino Wickman, who wrote Traction, wrote a follow-up book called Rocket Fuel. And basically it says there is the kind of the idea person, and there is the implementer.
All right. The visionary and the executioner is,
That's right. Yeah. So I'm more of a visionary. I have these ideas like we just talked through. And the way my process would likely work is I would call Molly Rose and I'd say, I have this crazy idea, and I'd riff it. I'd write it out on the whiteboard and I'd say, what do you think of this? And she'd go, I can build that and that. We need to do this. I need to find someone to do this, and we can have this done next week. And she goes and loves this, John. She loves going and locking herself in a room with a pot of coffee and her dog at her feet. And she will nail the website, the funnel, the email. She'll basically build the bones of the email structure, and then I have to fill it in. I write it. So we know, the two of us together, I'm the creator and she's the builder. And that is, for me, the secret sauce.
Secret sauce. If you're not getting anything done, hire somebody else that actually will get that done. And I think it's also realizing if you're good at organizing things, that you're probably the implementer. If you're not good at organizing things, you're probably not. Or you might be one of those people I've met that they have the dual. They can do both. It's pretty limited though.
Yeah, this has been a kind of a topic in Oyova for the last week or so, is making sure that, so to me, I think the key to getting a lot of stuff done is to write down the things that I thought about it while I was cooking one day, and it's writing down your recipe, because I was making bacon. Everybody loves bacon. And I never really paid attention to how long it takes. I'd always just look at it. Oh, it's done, right? But this weekend, I was like, I want to measure the exact amount of time and temperature it takes to make bacon exactly how I like it. And to me, that was 18 minutes. And now I know. Now,
like it's super crispy or something?
No, I like it just under crispy.
So
it's still got some chew to it, but it's so
chewiest.
But now I'm like, wow, I know now. I never have to guess. I never have to sit there and keep checking. Now it's 18 minutes, put the timer on, it's done. And I'll be able to make bacon
every time.
Huh?
You get the same bacon every single time?
Yeah, consistent, exactly how I want it. That's how we should need to look at business. If we need to onboard an SEO client, I want to make bacon, right? It's 18 minutes and it's done. Exactly. This is the guide that we need to do to get things done. You're so much more effective if you write it down, write down your process, write down your business recipe, and execute it.
I think it's aim for consistency. Too many people get caught up in the weeds, which is the weird thing, right? So the person that's responsible for creating the process is, seldomly the person that's, the best at following it. Right.
Right.
It's just one of those weird ironies. It's just like, yeah, this is your process. But now that we do it here, it's like, oh, well, what about this? Well, what about this? What about this? It's like those things don't matter. There's a baseline here. And if we could start with that baseline, then we can always, come back to it. And you can pull things away. But I look at something as like, all right. And one of the best things I think I got really good at planning early on was I would always start, what is the perfect scenario? What is the absolute perfect scenario that can happen? Okay, now let's just start peeling everything based on that perfect scenario. And then now we have what is more than likely going to be a semblance of reality. And having processes like that, I think is a substantial start. And then his semblance of reality is knowing like, I can't do this. Like I need somebody else to do this, or these things just do not get done.
But I mean, to his point that he was just talking about, like this construction company, he just sat down and wrote down the strategy, the things that they need to do in order to get recruitment. And now he's got a playbook that he's going to go sell to every other construction company. And if you don't write it down, you don't have a playbook. And then you have to just convince them of what the plan is every single time. No, you want to have it and say, this is the playbook on how to win.
Yep, I completely agree. All right, so now circling it back to the money. You may have PPP money, maybe that rich uncle died, maybe you actually hit the Powerball, but when it comes to you personally and your agency, what should you do with your money because of inflation? This is what Adam had to say about that.
You know, I'm not one to say, oh, go pour all of your money in to Bitcoin. I did have a college student 2 years ago who said, should I put all my money in Bitcoin? And I was like, well, how much are we talking? And he said, I have $2,600 or something like that. In hindsight, I should have said, yes, do it. Put it all in Bitcoin. Yeah. Today, I think you're exactly right. We've printed $9 trillion in the last year that the government's pumped into our economy. And when anyone says, I don't understand, why is the stock market on a tear? It's because we've pumped $9 trillion into the economy. I don't know that the gravy train will stop necessarily. I think that the Fed has essentially hinted at the fact that they are going to keep interest rates low and they're going to keep the housing market as robust as humanly possible, because that is sort of a primary, a leading indicator of how we're doing economically as a society. That being said, there is this massive lagging indicator, John, of how many millions of people have not made a mortgage payment since March. And last time I heard, Wells Fargo had 6 million mortgages that have not been paid in 9 months. So you get to that point, it's like that could tip the scales one way or the other real quick. They will do whatever they can to make sure that is not a major market event. That being said, I can see us having a correction. And so Warren Buffett is famous for saying that when gold is falling from the skies, you can either go out and collect it in a wheelbarrow or a thimble. And I think that the smart money right now is having cash and having cash on the sidelines for when there is a market event. Now that market event might be, we do have this rash of foreclosures and Wells Fargo stock takes a major hit and goes back to $12 a share like it did in 2011. At that time, I'd say go all in. Like go all in on something that is likely going to come back. I think Bitcoin, in my opinion, is actually a safe haven investment right now. It was meant to be a currency, meaning like we're going to transfer money in and out of Bitcoin. And today it's really more of an asset class. And I think what tipped the scales in favor of it being asset over currency is when you add massive hedge funds and insurance companies pouring money in, like Mass Mutual, one of the oldest, longest standing life insurance companies in the country, put $100 million into Bitcoin. When they do that, that's an investment. And they are playing the long game on that. I think they bought when it was $20,000 a coin. It's today $37,000. I tend to agree with some of the prognosticators that say this is going to be on a tear. It'll go to 100,000. So a good friend of mine is a financial advisor, and he said, Adam, what did you spend on your very first computer? And I said, I don't know, $2,500, and it probably had the same computing power as my Ember mug, my heated coffee mug. He said, you need to buy $2,500 worth of Bitcoin. And I did when it was $7,000 a coin. And so, today it's $37,000 a coin. And what I'm doing now is putting in, conceptually what I'm doing is dollar cost averaging, but I'm putting in money on a regular basis because I truly believe it's digital gold. It's a hedge against where our dollar is going.
Yeah. So 9 trillion. Let that sink in. That's a giant number, right? This was also pre-Tesla buying. When this is recorded, it was at 37,000, 38,000. Right, yesterday.
43.
Right now, it's at 43. Yeah, yesterday it got up to 47.
Yeah.
So, but what if the Bitcoin? I don't know. Bitcoin is just one of those things. Everybody's like, "That's a blockchain. It's on all these computers." But I don't know. There's just this fear that it could boom. Right? It's like, I gotcha. Like Ashton Kutcher with Bruce Willis's kids. Just it could be a whole punked. Is what I'm getting at. It's scary.
My thing that I take away from that clip is waiting for the market changing event. So last year we saw COVID scare, the market dropped, and people that were invested lost a big chunk. I mean, it went down like a 30% drop. So on the way down, I probably pulled out half of my investments, and then it dropped like another 10. I mean, when it got down to 16,000, I was like, this to me is the moment where I think is the bottom. And now nobody can guess the bottoms. Nobody knows. But I got back in and went all in and went even, more. And I saw 30% gain in 2020 because I bought at 16,000. And I mean, it went nuts.
So 30% gain of where your money was at before it started.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's huge. All right.
Yeah. And then GameStop just took all of that. So,
I love how optimistic you were about it. Yeah, this isn't going to work out well. You're like, no, this is, they're going to hold the line.
But the key is the mentality you have to be prepared for is you have to go against the herd.
Which
right?
The herd right now is buying a ton of Bitcoin. Like there's all these herd-like things that are happening. And I don't know. I think it's interesting because here's the other thing. Also, if you just have straight up dollars, your typical currency, which isn't really an asset, which is not an asset, then you could be screwed. You could be completely screwed because it's just continually chipping away at it as inflation goes up. So, but if you move everything into Bitcoin, it could have a substantial drop based on whatever somebody mass selling the blockchain, however it affects. Real estate, that market could tank. So no matter what, there's going to be risk associated with it.
But the reason why I like real estate, it's real property, right? You can farm on it. You can have a shelter.
Right.
The value of it is just what the value that other people purchasing it wanted. That's the price. But to you, it could be invaluable because it's your home. It's providing things for you. You can't sleep in a Bitcoin. A Bitcoin doesn't get you warm at night. So, but the scary thing is, and this is definitely a rich person's concern, is inflation just, constantly decaying your life savings. Your life's work is constantly being taken from you. And it forces you to put it at risk. Because if you put it in something that's safe, it's going to get whittled away. That's the thing that annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah, and it's this constant battle, and it's a game. And then now they're talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, right? Everything instantly gets substantially more expensive, and the homeless rate is going to increase because I'm going to find a robot to replace that manual labor input shouldn't exist.
So the headline on I think it was the Wall Street Journal or one of the main newspapers was Biden's proposed minimum wage increase will raise 1 million people out of poverty, but cost 1.4 million people their job. So what's the net effect?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And anybody that advocates for that, I would love to have that debate on this show and with anybody. And you're 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be an economist or somebody that's substantially more. I don't know any economist that would advocate for that, but I would love to hear somebody's argument of why that makes sense. Because from a business ownership perspective, you raise the cost for this. Everything else goes up. Like I don't fathom how it makes sense at all. Like it's that simple.
But it devalues the entire country's savings. That's why I think they're doing it. They want to reduce the freedom you have from your savings.
So we're getting kind of paranoid here. Are we going into like control world? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I definitely think there's
a control mechanism to it. I think it's stupidity.
Yeah.
And I think it's pandering to what it is. And I think it's just one of those things that just sounds good. You're like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And everybody's like, yeah,
on top of that,
making money.
On top of that, what about the forgiving 50,000 of school loans they're getting serious about? So that's another giant handout of cash that's just going to flood the market. And what pisses me off is that they're not addressing the problem. They're not addressing the fact that universities have raised their tuition rates by, ungodly percentages over the last 20 years. That is why.
Because of government funding.
Correct. But that's why school loans are such a burden on people, is because it's so expensive to get a bullshit degree now. I
was talking to a friend yesterday from England, and he told me what college his son went to. I think it was like Cambridge or something. I was like, oh man, that's got to be like super expensive. He's like, no, you don't have to pay for it over there. You just have to pay for room and board. But here, it's such a huge business that just siphons off of the government and then passes that down to people like us, where we then get stuck with that bill. Anyway, yeah, we'll turn this into a hard.
Nothing's free. They get taxed at much higher rates than us, so they're paying for it, whether you want to go to college or not.
Well, if that's what I'm saying. Well, if we're going to pay for it, then let's just pay for it and then tax everybody, so we know it's coming. The uncertainty is the issue and the destroyer of most businesses. There's so much uncertainty right now, which is happening with we're throwing money here, we're throwing money here, we're throwing money here, that everybody is pausing and not making the decisions necessary to really move the economy in the direction it should go.
Which also, as a business owner, when a new administration comes in and signs 50 executive orders in their first 2 weeks, I mean, that's just a disruption. I mean, there's a new paradigm emerging. And as entrepreneurs and business owners, we've got to figure out where that money is shifting and pivot to get to, like Adam said, I want to go, if the money is falling from the skies, I want to go collect it in a wheelbarrow. So that's what our job is.
And we got to find it. And that's where I think he was so gracious to come on our show and, provide that information. And I'm going to provide a bunch of information in the show notes to how to get a hold of Adam. He's a fantastic guest. I'll also throw in some of his TED Talks in there. And I know we got one more question in here. So John, why do you feel like crypto is so different than the stock market? I don't. I also don't invest in the stock market. I don't invest in things I can't influence the outcome of. But I believe do we have time for one more clip?
We sure do.
All right. There's one more clip here. This is, I think, great parting advice. And this is Adam's advice for, to the question I typically ask a lot of our viewers, like, hey, if there's anything else that the world should know, what should it be? And I love his response here.
And I think that 2021 for me, and hopefully for everyone else out there, is to get really, really freaking intentional about what we do. And that means eliminating some things. My good friend Antonio Neves, who wrote a book recently called Stop Living on Autopilot, he said, you know what happens when you have lots of apps open on your computer? Your computer crashes. He goes, we all have too many apps open. We got to close some apps. And I think 2020 was like this wake-up call that we got to close some apps. And in closing the apps, we have to be very selective about which ones we reopen in 2021. So that's that is the challenge that I'm faced with, John. And I think I'd give myself like a 4 out of 10 on it. But I'm working on it constantly. Like I'm meditating on a daily basis going, what are the most important things and what aren't? And how do I eliminate those that are not important to focus on the true mission at hand here? I think that's the key for agency owners and everyone else listening moving forward is 2021 has to be incredibly intentional. And if it is intentional and you treat yourself like a life architect, architecting what you want in your life, you can have everything you want, everything.
I think it's great parting advice. Be intentional, think ahead, critical thinking. I think it's something that's been missing for quite some time, take a stop the moment to think. And like you said, architect your life. He also does talks on that. So I highly recommend you guys check out Adam Carroll. And by the way, there's two. There's a musician named Adam Carroll. That's not this guy who we interviewed. Our guy's better. I don't know the other one. So give him a chance. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Thank you so much for all the comments. You're fantastic. Love you guys. And if you want to go ahead and join the Digital Mastermind, go ahead and shoot me an email, Jon@digitalmastermind.com. And thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and get this posted with the full interview in the next day or so.